Okay, so we gonna get into it. Hey guys, I hope I didn't say this in my last video, but I hope that, you know, at least someone is getting something from my videos. If not, it's chilled. Can you tell I'm a Taurus? I'm just like, oh wow, guys, what can I do at the same time, you know? But I also know that my lens is different, and I'm looking at things through, I was thinking about that today, how I look at astrology and tarot in pop culture and the media that we consume. And I'm talking media, I'm talking movies, I'm talking Netflix, I'm talking all of them, you know? And I'm seeing how these symbols are played out in the characters within these shows and series, movies that we watch, because I think a lot can be drawn from the fact that we're drawn to certain, you know, characters. You know, you may feel that you understand where one character is coming from, and then you link it to your own experience, and that can help you work through any issues that you have, any issues that are developing, or things you need to overcome. You know, I basically think that's where the root of it is that if we're consuming all of these shows and series, and I meant to say consume because we consume, the rate of which we are kind of taking in all this information, all of these forms of media, is more on a consumer level than it is, you know, than anything. And if we're going to consume it at this rate, then the least we can do is like gain from it and learn from it and kind of help ourselves. So anyways, my little rant is done. It's over. I'm trying to think. I'm like, oh yeah, moon's in Aquarius today. I'm sitting here, I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm like, moon's in Aquarius. Hello. So today, I think you know what I'm going to talk about. No? If you didn't see what I said, then let me clue you in. Today we're going to be talking about the 12th house, you know? And I'm just like, this is one house in astrology people like to talk about, you know? Like, dang, like, is it not the hype of astrology? Before I get into it, the movie that I was watching has Andrew Garfield and it's called Breathe. Now, full disclaimer, I did not watch the full movie, caught it in the middle, but I think what he said really hit me. He was basically talking about in the movie, so he gets polio, right? And he's like in the hospital, and he was given, I think, a few weeks to live. It's been a couple of months since I watched this movie, so bliss. And you know, basically through the help of his wife and others, he was able to live a long life, right? And he was able to help others who contracted polio live a long life. Now, within the movie, he has this speech. This is based on a true story, by the way. The movie's based on a true story. But within his speech in the movie, he was basically saying how these hospital head of the hospitals and the administrators they want to put these people in the back. You want to put me in the back. You don't want people to see my suffering and how I'm dying. So you gonna put me where no one can see me. You gonna put me where I can just be isolated, be restricted, be imprisoned. Because that's what you wanna, you don't realize that not only am I imprisoned within my own body, but now I'm imprisoned within this environment. Hint, hint, 12th house. So I was just like, dang, I'm like, you know, when it comes to the 12th house is associated with imprisonment, it's associated with incarceration, it's associated with hospitalization, it's associated with hidden enemies, it's associated with self-undoing, right? So when you see something like that, obviously you're going to feel a bit heavy, you know? And I think that's why there's such a hype about the 12th house, because we don't really understand what it means. But I feel like this movie kind of like just tied the bow on it, and I'm like, yes, this is what we mean. We mean that when it comes to the 12th house, and the topics associated with it based on the sign and planets within the 12th house, we want to hide it. We don't want to deal with it. We don't want other people to see what is going on within that 12th house, the truth about the 12th house. And that's why it can seem like such a prison sentence, because it's really like we don't really know how to access it in a straightforward manner. The only way it sometimes feels that we can access planets or aspects associated with the 12th house is through isolation. You know, I'm going to give an example, obviously. And don't worry if you don't have a planet within the 12th house. I'll get to it. If we have like the sun, right? The sun is our consciousness, our sense of consciousness, awareness, will. We have this planet that is associated with shining and being a beacon of light. Within the 12th house, it's like, what are you doing to me? Like, why? But what you don't understand is that when it comes to you shining, it's not meant to be seen by everyone. You shining is not meant to be held by everyone. It's not that, you know, you're at risk. It's just that you find it when you're isolated, when you're basically in a sense of incubation. That is when you really shine, and that is when you're really yourself. You know, you really feel yourself beaming. And that is why when it comes to the association with the sun being in the 12th house, we see people who, when we look at kind of astrology books, say that, oh, you should be in anything hidden, you know, behind the scenes. And it's not a bad thing. You know, in the society of ours, we kind of like hype the 10th house being seen by the world, you know. But really, every house is vital and every house is important. The 12th house is no different. It's just we need to learn to access that 12th house. We need to learn that being in isolation, whether it be a planet, ourselves, and accessing ourselves through that isolation, it's not such a bad thing. The problem comes when we hide it in, like we hide it. Like we know. It's like someone with Venus in the 12th house. And now I'm not gunning for anyone. I'm not. But with Venus in the 12th house, it's like you struggle when it comes to this idea of harmony, right? I'm gonna like harmony within relationships. And you don't know how to access it because maybe you weren't shown that. You don't know what it looks like. The problem comes when we leave that planet in isolation and we're like, I'm not gonna deal with it, guys. It's whatever. Like, love people for what? For who? I don't know. I wasn't taught, you know. And that is the self-undoing part, is that when we don't acknowledge the 12th house's presence and what it could really mean, that is when we undo ourselves, because we refuse to look at it. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to see it. We want to pretend it doesn't exist. We want to pretend maybe the planets within the 12th house don't exist. And when we do that, we are undoing ourselves, and then we have issues within our lives, and then we wonder why things aren't happening when we're not accessing that 12th house. You know, we're not dealing with the issues that are hidden to us in plain sight. Because remember, the 12th house is right above, well, you know, right above the first house. Sometimes it's right there, guys. Like, you don't even need to look that far, you know. Now, when you don't have a planet within the 12th house, all you gotta do is look for the ruler of the sign within that house. So, example, Virgo rules your 12th house, right? That means you're a Libra rising, depends on the house system you use. Virgo being the ruler of the 12th house, Mercury rules Virgo. So now we're looking at our mind, the way we communicate. And let's say Mercury is in the 10th house, right? So 12th house issues are gonna play up there. They're going to play within your reputation, your public sphere, politics, if you are a figure associated with that. And it can kind of seem like there's all these things coming up about your inverted commas, dirty laundry. You know, it's like the self-undoing, it's a bit public, it's a bit more seen. Things going down, it's a bit more seen. I mean, obviously, I'm trying to think. Let's say Mercury's in Cancer now. Yo, it's another show, you know. And this is not to say that's a bad aspect. Obviously, there's no such thing as good and bad aspects. But it's just, you need to be more attentive to the way that you're communicating information and who you're sharing it with. Maybe your family are the people who are undoing your public image and you don't even see it. And the reason they undo it is because of the power that you give them over you, you know. I probably just sounded like someone who's reading a chart, so I understand if you're a bit confused. I understand, but that was basically me saying that just because you don't have a planet within the 12th house doesn't mean you're destined for imprisonment, incarceration, isolation, or it doesn't mean that you need to ignore that house, because I see that a lot when it comes to planets not being within a house. It just means that these things that you're working through, it may not be for you to give to anybody. You need to work through it yourself, you know. And I feel like with the 12th house, with this self-undoing, it's the self-undoing of the ego, you know. The ego is not good or bad, just FYI, but when we really undo the ego, we really are able to see our higher selves, our divine within it, because you get to this point as you're working through this 12th house of really, what can really hurt me? What are my real limitations? Am I really limited, or am I limited just by my ideas of limitation? What are the bounds, and where do they begin and end? You know? Yeah, so if you have planets in the 12th house and you pretending not to see them, work with them, work through them, you know. Get an astrologer that you trust, someone that you trust, even if it's not an astrologer, guys, you know. If you know you have an issue and you can see the link between your 12th house and how it's affecting you, work through it, you know, because it could be affecting you more than you think you know. Look at the sun disappearing. And if you don't have planets within the 12th house, then look at the ruler. What's the ruler telling you? That what could the topics of your self-undoing be related to, and where do you feel isolated when it comes to these topics? Deal with it. Deal with it, because if you don't, you're gonna be there forever, you know. But I hope you enjoyed my video, and if you have planets in the 12th house or a sign in the 12th house, like, let me know how you're experiencing that, because I'm always like interested to hear anything astrology, tarot, esoteric. I want to hear it. I like to hear it. Oh, now the sun's coming out. But yeah,